Okay. In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, it's been a couple weeks since we've talked any foosball. Figure that would be a decent kind of addition to keep things a little current, a little interesting as we go through this evergreen series. We can talk a little bit about our off-season process for evaluating. Talk about we're starting to see some draft props pop. We're starting to get some free agent certainty, helping the landscape kind of come to some stability in terms of who's going to be quarterbacking which team, etc. So figure we'll do a little NFL talk today, and then come back and do some evergreen topics like betting partnerships and modeling stuff. Save that for spring and summer. We don't need to blow through all the good stuff.
You don't want to blow through all. We sat and made a long list, and we don't want to blow through all of them. Although, like you said, the Dak signing was maybe a catalyst for this for me today. Also, I mean, Miami and Tennessee made a trade. Free agency opens up in about a week. We've got a ton of the list of free agents is sickening this year. How many people are going to be moving around, going to be in new places. This is the stuff you need to pay attention to when you are adjusting. I mean, if you want to talk off-season process, modeling, power numbers, all the stuff that we talk about all year long with NFL, these are some important things for adjusting your priors because there's going to be some big pieces moving around. I mean, even outside of quarterbacks, there's going to be enough stuff where it's like, well, this is probably worth, a slight adjustment to this team. That was exciting, the Dak stuff for certain. And yes, some people have been shooting us some DMs. Hey, I got draft props up at this local. And, there's a few propping here and there in the offshores. And eventually we'll have more and more of those as we are. God, when is the draft's got to be like 6 weeks out yet?
Yeah, we're still a ways away, but you need to follow it pretty closely because once the prices start moving, they go one way. So you want to be on the front end of those.
April 29th. So we're literally talking like 7 weeks from today. But
okay.
It's true. When we sat and talked about we did a little draft stuff and we said like, hey, here's a good number that some of these people who follow this market's closer. Like, yeah, Kanish got this at like minus 180. Yeah, it's minus 3,000 now. There's literally stuff that moves that fast.
And there's a couple.
Yeah, some of this stuff gets out of hand in a hurry. I mean, you can see the Mac Jones is dropping. Some of these numbers on basically, will BYU kid go second. Some of that stuff's moving around. So there's some intrigue in some of these, and some people starting to take some positions. And yes, like Patrick says, they're already on the move on Bookmaker. It does not take much to move some of these.
No, it really doesn't. And it's not a volatility of back and forth with these prices. They tend to go one direction. And if you have your eyes on anything that you think is a good price, I wouldn't wait to try to get the best of it necessarily.
There's not a lot of push pulls in these. Everybody's like, this is wrong. Like, why would you set this at, there's some of these props are over under draft position. And I mean, some of these you've seen it move. It goes from, let's say it's 20.5 and it goes 20.5 and suddenly it's under minus 180. You wake up the next day. Most of the books have over 18.5 and we get to draft day. He's on over 15.5 and he ends up going somewhere in the like 15, 16, 17. I mean, some of this stuff does end up getting middled from opening to close as well. You can find some you can find some value or you can set up some middles if you play early and play late for sure.
I think I'm just going to make a bold prediction. This will be as successful an overall NFL drafting season as any possibly ever. I don't think I'll ever hit a 50 to 1 again on a first kicker prop. But the overall landscape right now, if you flip through some mock drafts, they look hilariously uninformed. Like there's not like general consensus on X, Y, or Z. or even just which teams are in the markets for quarterbacks. Like there is an extra, dose of imagination across all of the mock drafts out there, even among, the mock drafts from guys who are relatively well respected. In a normal year, those guys have spent the combine with agents, with teams and scouts. They know which teams and scouts were given what assignments in terms of who to evaluate and what those scouts thought of the players that they evaluated. All of that has been disrupted this year because of the changes in the process. And so there's going to be more uncertainty than ever, and the market probably is going to reflect that. Maybe we don't get as many props because of that, which is going to be a shame. But surely, just kind of flipping through what was available this last weekend, as I was kind of bored with, there's some good draft content out there. No, there's not. No. None of it looks good. No, it's all very speculative. And so with that, let's speculate.
Yeah, I know. I think you hit that on the head. A lot of these guys who do mock drafts, they have connections to scouts, and the scouts are just not able to feed them as much information this year because, not only are we not having the combine, we're not having as much availability to some of these players throughout the season. By availability, I not only mean maybe you weren't able to be in attendance in certain games weren't even played. Trey Lance is a highly touted quarterback prospect out of North Dakota
Chase.
State. Jamar Chase decided not even play. That there's Jamar Chase might even be more of an extreme case than Trey Lance, but Trey Lance, essentially, they played one game in the fall just to let him, showcase, and he didn't even have that good of a game. It kind of sucked for him. But North Dakota State said we're playing spring ball, and he can't play spring ball right before the draft. Like that would be incredibly irresponsible for him financially to do that. So it's tough for them. It's tough for him. And yeah, maybe it's not a Q&A episode, but I'm going to throw this up here, and we're going to do more Q&A episodes. I had a ton of fun with that last Friday, by the way. We will do that again.
Oh, yeah.
Does the lack of draft knowledge lead to more or fewer trades? Trades are impossible to speculate on. We will speculate on some shit today, but trades, I felt like there were fewer spots where last year where teams were like really asking around and trying to make something happen. Maybe we just don't know. And that's the thing about trades. There could have been like 15 trades last year in the first round that were really close to happening that just couldn't get quite there. That never happened. And a lot of times you don't hear about that.
Yeah, my answer to that question is going to be yes, there will be fewer trades, not just because the process is going to be disrupted again and getting people on the phone and, feeling out trade partners. All of that is that much more difficult because you're on a clock and you're all remote. But beyond that, like one of the advantages, I think, to why scouts talk to draft nicks, why mock drafts kind of become consensus at some point, it serves two functions. One is you want some general fan expectation of who your team is going to select so that when the time comes and they go and put that card in and it's a guy you've never freaking heard of, your immediate reaction isn't, oh, we blew it. You want fan confirmation bias that they got the guy that they that you've been told was the franchise swinging guy.
It's been leaked out to the local beat reporters like, oh man, they're really not
really
only
high on this guy. Really, he's awesome.
Really high on him.
I watched the tape. He's amazing.
Not only that, but he's a great fit for this scheme.
Yes,
and the offensive coordinator loves him. Can't stop talking about him.
Can't stop talking about
him. They do kind of build you up for it. It's silly.
Absolutely. And guess what? Think about the teams that don't do that. Think about like the Seattle Seahawks where they're like, I don't know, we're just going to pick somebody random. That always falls flat. We can use a running back. Yeah, we'll just take that guy. Like it feels like that, and it feels like they don't have a plan or they don't really know what they're doing. And similarly, without sort of a consensus, talent tier, that everybody is sort of in agreement across the film guys, across the scouts, across the, the actual employed by the NFL GMs. Like once there's kind of a stratified, set of player talent wise, it makes trades possible, right? It's like, nobody's going to trade up to the fourth pick to take a quarterback unless they know for sure that the fourth pick is going to take a quarterback, which is kind of where I want to start today's pod talking about the draft, is just because it's all quarterbacks. Really, this is a quarterback rich draft. Now, whether you believe all these guys are going to be franchise changing quarterbacks is not the point. The point is that there are 4 guys, maybe 5, that are perceived as franchise changing guys. And there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. And in fact, it's a wide open question right now whether the Texans are in the mix if they're ever going to make a deal for Deshaun Watson. It's a wide open question that the Seahawks might be in the mix because of sort of the friction between them and Russell Wilson, as weird as that has kind of unfolded this season. And similarly, teams like the Dolphins, who drafted a quarterback in round 1 last year, have the 3rd overall pick this year. Do they go back to the well if they can't get it? If they don't feel like they have the right quarterback in the future in place? The Philadelphia Eagles are in that conversation. They trade Carson Wentz to the Colts. Now, the reports floating out there today that the owner wants to try to make it work with Hurts, which maybe takes them out of the quarterback market. I had seen them in a bunch of trade scenarios. They're going to trade up to 4 because they really love Fields, or they really love Trey Lance, who you name it, right? Like, I've seen it all. And I don't think you can realistically expect trades to happen when there's not even sort of an agreed upon sort of strata of, how good are these QBs and where should they go? Should the first blank picks off the board all be QBs? And personally, I don't see it with these guys, but that doesn't mean that that there aren't a lot of new coaches, new regimes that all need to kind of put their flag in the sand and have a quarterback of the future. So,
well, not only that, but I mean, there's a couple teams, and the one that most comes to mind would be the Atlanta Falcons, who maybe in a year where it wasn't such a quarterback needy field of teams, they could think about it. I don't know if they can think about it just because there are so many. There's just a dearth of teams that have the quarterback that they need. So many people are going to be after these top quarterbacks in the free agent and the draft that they probably would they'd benefit from taking someone else because, some top positional players at basically every other position might end up falling, being a little bit of value where they can get it. So, I mean, if you can, it sucks because quarterback is obviously the most important position. You need to have a quarterback to win, but somebody who can wait or is like, we're still rebuilding, or, we know we're not going to win a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan at this point in his career with this roster, but we have so many other holes, you might be able to find some value elsewhere, especially if you're your film grinders, your guys that, look at the tape and follow these kids around. That sounds creepy, but the ones that, the ones that really scout these college kids, if they're not in love with someone, don't go reaching just because, Matt Ryan's long in the tooth. He's not got that many years left.
Yeah. So
you're going to need to replace him, but I mean, you can't go reaching for some of these guys because there are so many failures with 1st-round quarterbacks.
Sure. Yeah, let's put a pin in Matt Ryan for right now because I want to get. Let's go through a couple. Let's go through a couple because that one is the one that really confuses me. Is he on the trade market? I mean, like, are they considering trading him? Does they really need to replace him? Like, I don't 100% know that I agree with all of this. Kind of thoughts that they're in the quarterback market anyway, but who knows? Let's start with what is your current temperature on Deshaun Watson? It sounds to me like the Texans are not entertaining offers, sincerely. And at one point I thought, that's good. That's good negotiating prowess by them. Like they're literally going to drive up and get the best possible offer and actually make the most out of this situation. But now I actually am kind of gone farther and said, actually, no, you know what? Maybe they really are just going to sit on him and force him to sit out if he really is sincerely not going to play for these guys again. What's your current temperature?
I think both sides are dug in enough where that might be what happens. And it would be, I don't know, would it be unprecedented? I mean, unprecedented for a quarterback of that stature for sure. I mean, we've seen players hold out and sit out a season. Le'Veon, with his deal up in Pittsburgh, but this would be really weird for them to just say, we're digging in, we're not trading him, he's our guy, and him saying, well, I'm not playing for you. and just sitting out the season, giving up 1 year of his, the prime of his career. That's tough. It's tough, but if if everybody sticks to their guns, nobody caves, that's what will happen, I suppose. So if I'm Houston, I'm trading him. I don't know why. Let's say it was an amicable relationship. He was happy to be there. I might still trade him just because the roster's in such bad position.
100%, 100%
You've
agree.
gotten to the end of his rookie contract here, you're close enough where it's like, well, we tried. We just couldn't. Our GM coach combo wasn't good enough. We didn't win anything. We got a division title. That was fun, whatever. But yeah, at this point, even if they were happy and amicable, the relationship was good, I might think about trading him. So I'm surprised that they're so dug in on this. And it wouldn't surprise me because front offices lie to us so much. It wouldn't surprise me if they did trade him, if they were just, trying to bargaining chips like, oh man, oh boy, we would trade him, but it would have to be a really good offer, and I don't think anybody can do that.
No, what they've done so far is admirable on recapturing some of the leverage that they lost by Watson making it extremely public that he was never going to play for the franchise again. Like that cost them leverage for sure, and them sitting in and not accepting offers or not even listening, not entertaining offers has gotten them some leverage back. So good job by them. But if they don't actually use that to make the best trade possible, which is probably send him to the Jets and get the Jets number 2 pick overall and some other awesome stuff like that. They need to make that decision at some point. And it sounds like they're not scouting quarterbacks. It sounds like they're not really making any forward progress here. So I think Watson's going to be stuck there. And if he ends up opting to sit out, like that's his choice, but I'm not going to be critical of that. But boy, is it going to suck as a fan of the NFL to lose a year of absolute prime Watson in a season where you're starting to see we're losing Phillip Rivers, we're probably losing Drew Brees, we got all these guys aging up, and if you lose a prime Watson year on top of it all, it's gonna suck. And even if he does come back and play with this shit team, it's gonna suck. Like it's gonna be tough. So I'm very hopeful that they find a deal and they make this move and make it happen.
And that's the other half of that. Like, let's say you're not, even if you don't bet the NFL, even if you're not a fan of the Texans or Deshaun Watson in general, like overall, it brings up the quality of the league, the quality of the product on Sunday to have him. And me personally, I was excited to hear of his it was obvious he wasn't super excited about being there. But once he really aired it out, I'm like, good. I would love to see this guy with, a good offense again. He obviously a few years back, a lot of good receivers. In fact, like 3 pretty good receivers, no offensive line. It was like running for his life and still making a lot of plays, still being great. It was fun. That was fun. Like even that was a fun Deshaun Watson. It was a great offense to watch, and it had like 5 bags of trash starting at offensive line. Like his life was in danger a lot of those snaps, and that was great. So imagine putting him on obviously the Colts thing gets sailed, but behind a good offensive line with a couple of half decent receivers, my God, like that's what I want to see. I'm excited about good quarterbacks playing good ball. I don't like the Seahawks. I hate their franchise. I hate everything about them. I hate how they operate. I hate betting on or against them because they always find ways to, bend me over a barrel. But I really did have a lot of fun at the beginning of this season when Russell Wilson was just slinging it. They were opening up that offense. He was on pace for like 75 touchdowns, which would have been, impossible. But still, if they could have continued stuff like that, and yes, the schedule got harder, but they brought some of that on themselves. Like that was disappointing for me as just a fan of football. Like I wanted to see Russell Wilson at his peak. I want to see people hit their ceilings.
Yes,
that's more fun. Like getting held back by having to play for this franchise is no fun whatsoever. So hopefully they do trade him. And if not, I guess I'm prepared for the worst here.
Yeah. Okay. So then the Jets, sounds like they've moved on from Darnold. They're going to take a quarterback at number 2.
Yeah. Either that or God,
the market is telling us Zach Wilson is going number 2.
Yeah, it's very expensive right now to get Wilson under 2.5 for that. And anybody who gets confused on that, as I did many years in a row, the under is lower. It's just some people ask me that
under
every year.
2.5 means he must go pick 1 or 2.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Easy
not.
P. And I mean, I don't know what that's priced at now, but a couple days ago, it was like minus 250, essentially implying a pretty high probability. What's that, like 68,
in the last
70%?
month? It's trickled from about even odds out to about minus 300.
Yeah,
depending on where you shop.
A lot of signal that the Jets are probably going with him. There's some scouts, some Twitter scouts that are kind of poo-pooing that he's a big league NFL arm, but a lot of the stuff he's put on tape was pretty good. Granted, he played against some less than great competition at some points. He didn't play in one of the real massive leagues. Not like he was playing SEC defenses, but fucker's got an arm. I mean, he's got a cannon. And if he's a smart kid and willing to learn, we've seen a kid with a cannon arm and maybe some shitty other metrics go up to Buffalo and make it work after a couple of years. So,
sure.
If you put the right coaching staff with a kid who's willing to,
does he even
make
have
some changes?
Any other metrics that are questionable? I think he's pretty.
No,
widely...
I think the main question is, like, look who he's doing it against.
Competition.
Like,
yeah.
And I think that was, Allen was a little bit of accuracy, but at the same time too, it's like, and he played for Wyoming. Like, that's not a great, that's not a great conference. That's not tough.
Ooh, man.
So
Mountain West shade.
If I'm going to shit on the Mountain, well, the Mountain West is a fine conference. It's just not the SEC.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't disagree with you. And it does seem likely he'll be your number 2. And if you want a little bit more of a safer bet, you can take him as the second quarterback taken instead of number 2 overall. I think they're basically the same pick. The risk is that the Texans somehow the 11th hour make a deal, send Deshaun Watson to New York for that pick, and then they like someone else. Who knows who that would be? But it does seem like that's the right fit, and that's where they're going to go forward. And honestly, at this point in the process, maybe the Jets are like, okay, well, we made our best offer for Watson. We didn't get a call back about it, so we've moved on, and we've now talked ourselves into this as the future of our franchise going forward. And I guess, what do you think they do with Darnold if you're the Jets? What do you do with them? Do you listen to offers?
He's worth something.
Do you let him make a draft day trade?
Yeah, I think somebody would probably kick the tires and try to get something out of him. He's young enough, and he's shown some glimpses at times. It's been a poorly coached team, a poorly run team, a poorly constructed roster. And what happened?
Oh, we captured
Bitcoin's about like
we captured the
52.8.
52.6 level, and it's like it's going now. Thank God.
It is ripping now. BTC is it's funny. I checked it like 10 seconds ago. I held a poker face. So anyway, Darnold, you can make the case that the coaching, the roster construction, some injuries, mono, a few other things. He hasn't looked great, but I mean, there's a few. It's like the old saying about golf. That one shot that keeps you coming back. When you make that one nice chip, it lands 2 feet out on 18, you make your birdie putt. It's like that. He's had a couple of those throws where it's like, all right, maybe I'm not completely out on this guy, where he makes a nice deep throw when he's had a couple of half decent receivers in his stable. So somebody probably kicks the tires, and you can get something. Getting something's better than nothing. So I don't know. I don't know what the trade market is for him. I haven't really dug into that, but if somebody's willing to give him something,
get a third, I guess if a team's giving up a third or a fourth rounder or something like that for him, then he's probably getting put into a starting QB competition sort of a role.
If you're giving up a third rounder, you're certainly at least.
If it's less than a fourth, he's probably he's now in backup territory, and teams like the Rams, might be looking at him as backup for Stafford or something like that, right? So it's not obvious to me that there's a suitor out there for him. It's not obvious to me that that they're going to want to keep him and Wilson in house. They probably want Wilson, throw him out there day one, start getting some reps. I don't think it makes sense really to keep Sam Darnold around for a year, cross your fingers that your new offensive coordinator and that system works, and that he somehow gets even more value, and you have like a Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers situation on your hands. So it's
that worked out for all those championships that Diego got. Can you imagine having those two quarterbacks on your roster at the same time?
Getting no titles.
I'm not even sure they made an AFC title game.
They did. They lost to the Patriots in 2007 with Philip Rivers had a blown ACL.
Yep, I forgot about that one.
No, they could have won that game, honestly. So the question is, what do you do with Darnold? What's the future of the Jets? And Trubisky Darnold competition. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the Bears are all over the map. They're trying to trade for Russell Wilson. They're trying to trade for Deshaun Watson. They are all over the map. They're going to get someone, and then it's probably going to be Darnold Trubisky competition, like you're saying. They have a Foles problem. They got to pay Foles next year. So I don't know who the hell knows what the Bears end up with here. Dolphins at 3, we think are more realistically going to stick with Tua. They're going to try to make this work. I know that it sounds like Ryan Fitzpatrick is persona non grata in terms of coming back into that role.
He said he's playing. Like he's going to play somewhere.
But it's not going to be Miami.
It doesn't sound like it's going to be Miami.
And Miami doesn't seem like they're in the quarterback market at all. And from what they're doing draft prep wise, right?
And the Dolphins are already making good use of their treasure trove of draft picks. They just picked up first round talent from last year.
Man,
was it last year?
Isaiah Wilson trade. I mean, maybe the guy's done with football, but he was a clear top 2 talent, and he was young. Yeah. He's young, so he could potentially get bigger, get stronger. If he's got any stomach for continuing to play football, he could absolutely thrive in Miami. That was nice. What did they give him? They gave up did they just exchange 7ths? Is that right?
I'm not even sure what the draft pick compensation was yet. It sounded like a 7th and then another 7th, or was it 7ths flipped, which is odd. But I mean, if he truly was just unhappy with being in Tennessee and he wants to continue his career elsewhere, then kudos to my guys down in Miami. They made a good trade, and they might have something great on their hands there.
Okay, so then if the Dolphins are picking 3rd, we think they're probably in the market for a wide receiver. That at least has been sort of the tea leaves are saying that. From what we can tell, Jamar Chase would be the guy if they go wide receiver, but they're in a decent spot if Atlanta really is considering quarterbacks, and I haven't heard otherwise, then that 3 pick is pretty attractive to anyone who has eyes or hearts for Justin Fields. Do you think they entertain trades for the 3rd overall pick? Does somebody move up into that spot? Do they accumulate more assets? Because they could slide down to the later portion of the top 10 here. They flip flop with let's say the Panthers. Panthers move up from 8 to 3, and the Dolphins move down to 8. They're still getting an absolute wide receiver 1 in this draft at the 8th overall pick. They may get the first receiver off the board, honestly. That's true, because there's not very many wide receiver needy teams in the top 10. I guess you're listening to trades, obviously, if you're in the 3rd hole, right? You're not just sticking with you're not taking a wide receiver there if you don't have to, all right?
I wouldn't think so. Especially the way your roster's built right now, that's a weird spot for you to have. You don't want that spot.
No.
So, and I don't know if you can say that hurts their trade value because people know they don't want their spot. It's still a very coveted spot. So the fact that, they might be able to get out of there with a little bit of value somewhere else, that'd be great for them, I think. Because you're right. They could trade down maybe somewhere inside the top 10 still and get a good wide receiver or a great tight end. I don't know.
Yeah. That's an interesting little nugget, because Tua does excel over sort of the middle of the field.
Yeah.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so then I was considering looking at Chase 3rd pick overall props. They're in the plus 404 range. In fact, what was Chase's over under? Was it it was 4.5, right? Yep.
I had these props up.
Actually, I got him at 5.5, and the over is now juicy at minus 140. So Chase, if he doesn't go 3rd, he could slide. So that has long tail sort of potential. Question is, Dolphins don't get a deal done. They end up picking 3rd. Do they take him? And that's possible. Maybe even probable.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you heard anyone a strong connection to Justin Fields? I've seen a couple of teams slot him going to the Falcons fourth, saying he's going home to Atlanta. Like they're using that weird regional connection, which never really ends up being a thing. Never ends up being a thing. Haven't heard Atlanta really being, interested in the quarterback market, other than people just kind of deciding that Matt Ryan's done and they're never going to get another swing at a top 5 quarterbacks, so they might as well take one now. And yeah, maybe that's true. The Falcons to me need so much to be a realistic contender. The Art Smith era, I don't know that I have lots of high hope of it early, being especially competitive early, although, maybe they have advantages over the Panthers and Saints, considering some of the structural issues with the Saints contractually, and considering the Panthers don't really know what they're doing with the quarterback position. So it's possible that the Falcons are closer to an AFC South championship than we realize. But this is a draft overall that's rich in talent at the quarterback position, at the wide receiver position, and doesn't really have a pass rush. And if you were picking fourth and looking at this roster, that would be the area I'm trying to attack most. And there's really not a player like that. Would you agree?
There's not a defensive player I want in the top 5,
No.
Maybe not in the top 8. There are guys that will go that high because it's just the nature of best player available and who they're going to want to take. But I would say I would be very comfortable trading back if I'm Atlanta. I'm not excited. I'm not excited about Fields, and I'm on record as being a horrible evaluator of talent when it comes to quarterbacks coming out of college. But here we are, and I don't think a lot of smart people I'm listening to aren't excited about him at the next level. So if you're going to take a swing that high, why not just wait one more year? Because you have a lot of holes to fill in the roster. Like, just maybe punt this one, find something else, go ahead and move back, find some defensive players, accumulate some picks. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what to do with Atlanta. And it's weird because Atlanta's a roster for like the past couple of years. Every year we do these preseason, little previews, and we're like, oh, this is a roster that has a lot of talent. But and then the past 2 years have been like, but the coaching sucks, and that's going to hold them back. Are we fine trying to back this Dan Quinn team? And it has all the talent in the world, and then the coaching drags them down, and then they suffer 3 or 4 injuries in defense 2 years ago, a couple this year. It just it's still a roster that has some talent. It's kind of in that weird tweener stage where I can't decide. It's like, is this a roster that's moving up or moving down? Like, there's a lot of good pieces, but they're starting to show a few more holes now.
They don't have good coverage. They don't have a good pass rush. They're not good tackling. Their defensive scheme stunk. Raheem Morris, I thought, did a very admirable job of kind of pulling shit together over the last half of the season. He was a good hire by the Rams, I think, as their new defensive coordinator. That'll be an interesting fit. But yeah, I completely agree. Julio Jones is getting older. Calvin Ridley needs to get paid pretty soon. Your offensive line stinks. Matt Ryan obviously is losing mobility. He looks like he's losing a little leg strength. That's all huge question marks. So yeah, maybe they are in the market for a quarterback, but you get a new GM. I don't really know what to expect from this guy. You get a new head coach. For all we know, he wants to find his, Derrick Henry in round 2 of the draft. Najee Harris going at the top of round 2 to the Falcons sounds about right to me.
Yeah,
like that seems like a likely slot. In fact, Najee Harris overs on that from that angle, I think, is fair. Yeah, it's not a great team, and I don't really know.
And if I were them, I'd start looking at some of these, like last year, Jacob Eason, or somebody who's going to slot later in the second day or into the third day. Like, look at somebody who's a little raw, but has some upside, a high ceiling project quarterback. Like, fill in some defensive holes, get some coverage guys. Trade back and take Surtain. I don't care. Do something like that. And then And yeah, if we're gonna pick an Alabama player, I'd rather have him. Trade back, get some defensive help, and then look for some project quarterbacks. I don't know. I'd feel better about that if I'm an Atlanta fan because it's not. Just look what Tampa Bay did, and yes, New Orleans is in cap hell, but they still have a couple years to fight through that, and they have enough talent on that roster where it ain't this year. You're not going to draft Fields and be competing this year, and if he's a bust, you just set yourself back another couple years.
It's true. Okay, so then you have an interesting question about the Justin Fields draft prop. Over under 4.5 is his current number. Over is juiced. I'm inclined to look over there because, as kind of mentioned, I don't know how easily trades will be facilitated. I don't know that I'm personally sold that Atlanta is going to try to get a quarterback in this draft. And in general, there's enough buzz around guys like Trey Lance, guys like Mac Jones, even guys like who's the Florida kid? Trask?
Yeah,
Trask. There's some buzz around. Who's the Texas A&M kid? Kellen Mond. Mond. There's like enough buzz around those guys that I can see like teams that are kind of, are we in the quarterback market? I don't know. Like they're probably gonna just wait and just look for value. They're not gonna overpay to get up into this, top tier of slots and take quarterback. So I'm inclined to look for the over in Fields. I'm inclined to look for the over in Lance. I don't know that this is as clean as people are mocking it, where there's going to be a nice orderly fashion of people trading up and taking quarterback, even though that is probably the game theory correct thing to do.
It is. Just go ask the PFF draft thing. You see that one guy, the guy who just took quarterbacks, like every pick in the first round and gave it all A's because he just kind of gamed the system on that. But I mean, there is something to be said for, some of those second tier guys like Mond. Mond was great. He ended up having COVID. I feel like a bunch of the A&M players got COVID or something before the Tennessee game. Was that, if I'm remembering right? I think I had a number on it, and then they canceled the game. Yeah,
I think that's correct.
There's some of the stuff where maybe we haven't even gotten to see some of these guys, and you can find some value here. So, yeah, I think there's definitely some decent quarterbacks outside of the top few. We find that, every year. Look at the guy who just signed the giant contract. Where did he get picked? Like third round?
Yeah, Dak Prescott was third or fourth, maybe. Yeah. It was late. Yeah. So it makes sense.
I don't even know how many. I don't even know how some of these draft nicks start ranking these guys, like where they have them. So it'd be curious. I'm going to start digging into that. Like who do some of these other guys think of? Like, I'm trying to think anyone we haven't named. I think we named a lot of the guy. Texas kid, Ellinger, Ian Book.
Yeah.
Ian Book from. He was, he's for sure. He's been around forever. He has to be coming out at this time. Stanford guy. There's some even buzz around the Arkansas guy, I feel like. So who knows what we'll see in the third and fourth rounds. I think some smart teams can make some smart decisions there.
Okay, so this brings me into kind of the key here, which is maybe the best prop available for the draft right now, which is Penny Sewell under 5.5. In what universe is his hard floor, not the Cincinnati Bengals at 5? Realistically, he could be a top 3 pick, a top 2 pick, a top 4 pick. But I think if he's available at 5 when the Bengals are on the clock, I think from every aspect of building a franchise, you just drafted a quarterback who got hurt because the offensive line was trash. Like, this is a no-brainer. This is the right fit for the right player. And I do not see how Cincinnati passes on a franchise-defining left tackle to protect their young Joe Burrow asset that they have in hand. I'm looking at minus 300s and across the board on this guy. I feel like it should be like minus 1,000
at least. So let's go 1 divided by 300. 75%. Yeah, seems a little higher than that. I don't know. What would we make that percentage? 90? 92? Yeah,
90.
I think 70. So 300 implies 75%. I was just pretending to do math there.
Yeah.
It's higher. Like, that's an easy one. That's my favorite one. It's 4. So
Yeah.
4 is your decimal odds. Divide 100 by 4. So 75%. And I do believe it's a lot higher than that. So this is one of the rare. We talk about this. We've talked about this in other evergreen pods, or we've talked about this in tennis betting or what have you. Like, there are certain, and I know a certain tennis bettor who's not afraid to play like minus 400, minus 500 money lines in tennis because he's a absolute nut job and he's run enough back testing to prove that he's right. But this is a case where, the juice doesn't matter. Maybe one of those, you see this, there's an argument on Twitter, I don't know, a month ago to some hockey guys, I'd never play over minus 145. Or I would never, ever, ever. It's like, and we just had this conversation in the tennis chat. Everything in betting is a percentage. It is a probability. And until you boil it down to that, you're looking at the wrong thing. Like,
yeah.
And yeah,
what was the highest price?
Down,
what was the highest price you laid? What was the highest price you laid on over 5.5 offensive linemen last year?
Oh, it had 4 numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you because that.
Remember over 1.5 Notre Dame players?
Yes,
in the first round.
4 numbers.
The
I can't
best
go back
tackle,
and look at that because those are all at 5 dimes. It's gone.
Oh, that's sad.
I can't go look at this anymore.
Yeah, no, I think I bet that one out to minus 1,200. Was the last bet I placed on that over 1.5 because it was literally like Quentin Nelson's going in the top 10, no doubt. And then the best tackle on the board was a Notre Dame kid, McGlinchey. And so it was like, no, he's going in the first round. That's 100%. It should be 100%.
Yeah, that was settled within an hour.
And it was the top 10 pick. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a silly prop. And that's another one of those things where it's like what you're pricing there is the probability that one of those Notre Dame kids gets arrested for a heinous crime before the draft.
Before.
Like he literally is like accused of murder and becomes undraftable. And then you lose your money. And at that point, you just have to tip your hat to the universe and say, I laid the juice and I got caught.
Yeah.
But that was a silly one. We'd laid some heavy ones during the live betting for sure, and we will continue to do that with the NFL props and NFL draft props because it's, again, when you derive a probability from something and compare it, and you have an edge, it's not juice. You're just comparing probabilities.
Yeah. Now you have the time factor as well. So you're locking up credit, you're locking up bankroll between now and when this gets resolved. And if you can't play this at nitrogen, then I don't know if you want your bankroll in US dollars anyway. But I would say that the fair price for Penny Sewell under 5.5 should be like minus 800-ish. It's in the 10% range that he slides past the Bengals, in my opinion. And honestly, the next prop up, Kyle Pitts over under 6.5. Under 6.5 is juiced right now. And a lot of mocks are sending Pitts to Philly, 6th overall. Philly really drafting a tight end? They need a lot of other things.
Yeah, I would
not really a tight end. Right?
I'm trying to think what their greatest need would be.
Their
offensive
cornerback or wide receiver.
Their offensive line got shuffled around and beat up. But at that point, with Sewell gone, I don't know if you reach for another one. You'd trade back for that. Defense would be useful. And then, receiving help would be really great since they've screwed that. And I mean, if you're the Eagles, do you even draft a receiver or do you just realize, like, we can't do that? We're not any good at that.
I think
you
do.
It's like me entering a long distance running race. I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to be any good at that. I'm just not. Why would I do that?
I think they probably take the top cornerback off the board in that spot at 6, and then they
coverage would be nice. Coverage
at the top of round 2.
Coverage, linebacker, receiver, something like that. Yeah, a tight end would be a weird grab there.
They have pick 37. They can get a wide receiver with round 1 talent at the top of round 2. I think they take the top cornerback off the board. Would be my guess.
I can live with that.
I don't know why people are mocking a tight end to them.
It's because some of this is like, oh, this is where he fits. Like he's like the 6th best player or whatever. It's like, well, that doesn't always work out. Like we've seen this guy's a top 5 player, but man, nobody needs him and nobody can make a trade, and he's going to fall to 8.
Yeah,
like
especially
all the time.
Especially because like you really want to build around tight end in today's NFL, especially with some of these other wide receivers who are in the mix here. Chase may still be on the board. I think you're definitely going to have Smith and Waddle, the two Alabama kids, are going to be out there. There's another handful of wide receivers who are clear top, round one talent, wide receiver wise. And I'm interested to see where and what they hang the over under on number of wide receivers taken in the first round, because I think there's going to be a lot. This is going to be a priority of a lot of teams coming into this draft, is we need to get some of this top tier wide receiver talent. It was pretty obvious last year that there was so much wide receiver talent in that draft that teams kind of waited because they figured they could just get a guy later. I don't think many teams are going to make that mistake again.
Yeah,
letting a guy like Justin.
And you know what's funny? It did kind of work out for a few teams. There were some good receivers that went in the second and third round.
Of course,
it's easy to pick those out because you don't have to sit there and you don't have to sit there and mention all the misses. Like it's easy. Oh, even like Jefferson, like fourth or fifth off the board later in the first round, at like 22nd.
He was the fifth wide receiver off the board at 22
easily.
Overall. You redraft last year's draft, he goes in the top 10 easily.
Yeah, easily the best receiver off the board. And Rieger went right before him. Lamb. It's not like Lamb had a bad year.
He's good. He's good too.
There were some issues at the quarterback position there that probably brought down some of his stats. But I mean, you can hit on guys. Like you look at Chenault in the second round. You look at
T. Higgins is going to work for the Bengals. Michael Pittman Jr. is going to work for the Colts. Chenault is going to work for the Jags. Chase Claypool is going to work for the Steelers. These are good players. And
KJ Hamler.
There were a lot of good players.
Receivers. I'm trying to find a miss. I'm not sure I can find one. All these turned out to be pretty. Ayuk turned out to be pretty well.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what they hang that over under on number of wide receivers drafted. And I guess we haven't really talked about. So I don't really know where the right fit for Kyle Pitts is. And maybe teams prioritize the tight end position because there's no one close to as good as him, but I don't know that the NFL is really built around tight ends nowadays.
It doesn't make sense. Like, there's theories of take the best player available and take a player for fit. And it feels like those are two, separate kind of schools of thoughts. But I think you can mesh those two things and definitely say we need the best player available, but we can't take somebody who does not fit at all. Like it does not fit the rebuild. It does not fit where we're drafting. We don't have the need. We have to trade this or we have to go a different direction.
Do you remember the last tight end that got drafted top 10?
Iowa kid, wasn't it?
Yeah.
2 years ago?
Yeah. Good memory. Good memory. It was TJ Hawkinson went to Detroit.
The Lions,
and I mean, he made a Pro Bowl, but it's not like the Lions can build around TJ Hawkinson.
So nobody's talking about it's kind of a premier spot if you're a quarterback. You want to land there now. Or when we're talking Goff, Goff has Hawkinson now. Maybe that's what he needs to turn this career around. He's a fine tight end, but it's not.
I don't know about that. So we get down to the 7th pick, and it is the Lions. And interestingly, have heard no buzz or speculation that they're in the quarterback market at all, which is wild because a guy like Fields could be there. Trey Lance probably going to be there. You can have your pick of quarterbacks. And we heard a lot of buzz last year that they were kind of in the mix for Tua at the number 3 overall position. So they were thinking, draft quarterback last year, at least from a franchise standpoint. Now all those guys got fired, right? Or a lot of them got fired.
Yeah.
But I have a tough time believing that they really are going to go chips on the table. We're going to see if Goff can be reconciled here, rejuvenated here. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to have the number 1 overall pick next year, and we're fine with that. We'll take a quarterback then. I mean, I get that thinking kind of. And yes, your team has so many flipping holes. You might as well address some of them, with blue chip potential players. But guys I'm seeing mocked to the Lions are like Micah Parsons, maybe another cornerback. They obviously still need to address that position. Drafting Okudah last year wasn't good enough. They're going to probably need to go back to the
injuries were just so rough for them last year. Like they were bit by an injury bug. He got tossed in there. We shot up the depth charts by attrition.
If they lose Galladay in free agency, they probably lose Galladay in free agency, we think. Marvin
I'm up
Jones
in the air
is getting
on that.
old. Are they in the wide receiver market at the 7th position?
If they lose him for sure, and we'll find, we'll know more about that. And yeah, the free agent, the list of free agents, as we mentioned earlier in the show, pretty thick this year.
It's
good
really
offering.
Thick. Yeah. Okay. So it's tough to really say. We're getting into the real tough to handicap speculative part of the draft. I see a number on Devontae Smith that's 7.5. That looks a little high. I don't know that anyone in the top 7 is really screaming wide receiver besides Miami, right? Any of these other teams to you look like a wide receiver fit besides Miami?
Again, like the Eagles a little, but is that what you want to do at that spot? There's so many other ways to go with that.
Yeah, I still contend that they take CB1 and then come back and get wide receiver 8 or whatever at the top of the second round, and they'll be fine with that. The two names that stand out from the cornerback position, Caleb Farley and Patrick Surtain, probably go in the top 10. You have a couple of teams that will likely try to address their coverage. In Denver's in the market for a cornerback. Dallas is in the market for a cornerback. The Lions are in the market for a cornerback. Philly's in the market for a cornerback. So there really are 4 reasonable landing spots for a CB in the top 10. I think Surtain and this other kid Farley are good underplays at their current numbers. You can get Farley under 9.5 for plus 102. Surtain under 10.5 is minus 140. Those look like very strong plays. Would you disagree?
Especially Surtain. It's, I think, one, if not both, are going top 10, and I like him better. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm still just starting to dip my toes into this. I got to read a bunch more. I'm trying to figure out like who I liked from last year, who was right, like who I actually trusted with some of these stuff, some of these mocks. I remember like
Joey Knish, no one.
Yeah. I remember who I don't trust. Like, oh, this is horse shit.
Yeah, I remember that too. I've got a list of those in my head. Yeah, there's a lot of those.
But I mean, there's some, and that's something like just Zach Morris timeout on all this.
Sure.
That's something to be said. Like there are a lot of people in the media, and I guess we're in the media, so we got to fall into that. But there's a lot of people like, like important people, like people who are way more famous, like people, massive followings that report on the NFL, that carry water for teams, carry water for the league, that you cannot trust what they're saying. Yeah. They're so full of shit. Like there's some stuff every year. It's like, this is that you're just saying that. Like somebody texted you to tweet that out, and maybe you're getting some money.
You know that there's already stuff. There are already people peddling bullshit about Trevor Lawrence as the best quarterback in this draft to try to drum up interest, so that it's not 4 or 8 weeks of who's going to be number 1 overall. Trevor Lawrence, duh. Like next story, like they're literally trying to drum up something about that.
Oh no, I mean you mean the BYU guy, Wilson?
Yeah, the people who are saying I take Wilson over Lawrence. Yeah. I mean, there are people that are spinning those stories just to make it an interesting conversation piece, because obviously Trevor Lawrence is going number 1 overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is not a controversial take, and you can throw shit against the wall and get people to click and read and watch, and it's stupid. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not to be trusted. I would look for. I don't know. I think this is an offensive talented. The offensive talent in this draft is superior to the defensive talent by a lot. Okay. The problem is that the teams at the top of this draft all have piss poor defenses, and so it's kind of. It's kind of a misfit in terms of where teams are slated, in terms of draft position and what talent is available. And so it's going to be a very weird misfit. Like guys like Waddle, guys like Smith, these wide receivers, they deserve to be top 10 picks in terms of their quality of play, what they can contribute on day 1. But they may slide out of the top 10 just because there's not an obvious need for a lot of these teams at the wide receiver position. Like if it gets to 10th overall and Jamar Chase and Waddle and Smith are all on the board, I'm not going to be surprised. And I'm also not expecting Dallas to take a wide receiver there. There's no way, right?
They surprised you last year, though.
They surprised me last year taking their third wide receiving option when their defense was extremely talent poor, and it bit them in the ass. So I don't think they're going to do that again. But I don't know. I guess now that we're down here in the Broncos, Cowboys, Panthers, Broncos, Cowboys land, do you think Panthers are in the market for a QB or defense still?
And I never know where they're going to go. And this is the part of the draft where I start to check out, where you do have, well, not check out, but like from a handicapping it standpoint.
Sure.
Because once you get like, honestly, once you get past 5, like somewhere in the 6 to 10 range, somebody makes a move nobody expected him. Maybe not nobody expected, but like it was more of their secondary move. Like they're like 70% they'll take the defensive player here, or like 30% they'll take the O lineman, something along those lines. When they go to the audible, when they take the secondary thing, it sets off this chain reaction of shit, where you have to say, well, now everything changes for this team, everything changes for this team. You know, like last year, the only thing that didn't change was when we got to like 10, and it's like, well, now nothing has changed for Cleveland, or I think they were 10, somewhere around there. Like they're still taking an offensive lineman. They're just getting a better offensive lineman because they have more options since nobody took one in front of them. Like there's a bunch of teams whose their needs are going to change, or their needs aren't going to change, but the availability of players they could need is going to change, and they'll have to make decisions.
That's true.
It throws the whole thing out of whack. That's where once we start getting past that, I start taking a step back, looking at it from a more macro and saying, like, you know, stuff like the Mac Jones. Like, all right, Mac Jones, his floor ceiling, here's where we need to model him in this. I don't know where he's going, but he's not getting past maybe this spot. You know, I really stopped trying to figure out exactly who's going to take who once we get to that point. It's so hard.
Yeah. Okay. I don't disagree with you. I think Carolina is.
Carolina. I would take defense.
Yeah, Carolina probably is in the quarterback market in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, they were not satisfied with what they got from Teddy Bridgewater last year, and he was a placeholder anyway. So, not a surprise that they're going to move on potentially, or at least bring in competition for him. He may be you may hear Sam Darnold whispers to Carolina, for all I can tell you. We've certainly heard other trade destination possibilities for other quarterbacks to Carolina as well. Similarly, it doesn't seem like Denver is making any overtures to the quarterbacks from a drafting standpoint, but they've been very active and rumored to be involved in the free agency standpoint from a quarterback position, and nothing's materializing. So is this really the Drew Lock show in 2021?
I thought they were kind of checked out of that. I thought there was, there was talk about they're not so sure. Like, all right, guys, we screwed up. Like this, we can't have Drew Lock be our quarterback and win games. And, you know, we nailed Judy. We nailed Hamler. We had this Tim Patrick. He's kind of good too. We have other good tight ends. Like our offensive line isn't trash.
They played well last year.
The defense is good but hurt, and we'll be back next year. Like we have a legitimate chance to be a team in the mix for a playoff spot if we had a quarterback. You know, obviously playing with a third thank you, maybe. I can never think of this guy's last name. I'm getting better at it. Tim Patrick. Sounds like one long last name, but they have a wealth of good wide receivers. And if they're going to stick with Locke, I think it's going to be a setback for that team. And it could be a team that, with the right quarterback on it, could be a playoff team as soon as this year. So I don't know. We'll see what they do. Maybe getting Elway out of that position where he was making more decisions will help them. He's still with the team. He's still in the front office, but he's, taking a different set of responsibilities. So it'll be interesting to see if how much his influence is over it. Because I think it's one of those like Pace Nagy Trubisky things where it's,
sure.
Maybe he's a little more married to Locke, whereas somebody with a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of ideas will say, all right, we're moving on.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. You want to comment a little bit on Dallas's quarterback situation? They got a deal done with Dak.
It's gonna be spendy, but now I mean, that's what he was gonna get. Like that's what you had to pay him if you want to keep him. I guess I never doubted he was gonna stay. Man, the running back contract is just dragging your ass down now. I don't know what you do about that.
And the Jalen Smith one's not great either.
Yeah, especially since he sucks. Like, it'd be one thing, like, oh man, this guy's all over the field. He's great. No, he sucks tackling, sucks in coverage. He sucks at everything.
Yeah, it's not great. They prioritized and signed the wrong two guys first, and they put themselves. They did it entirely backwards. Actually, they went Zeke, Smith, Cooper, then your quarterback. And in the meantime, let Byron Jones walk out the door, and he's an all-pro in Miami.
Oh my God! Yeah, Byron Jones looks amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Not great.
Sorry, Dallas.
Yeah. So they're in cap hell for the foreseeable future. Not going to be very many defensive free agents coming into Dallas. They're going to have to kind of go pick through the scrap heap again, which means they're probably going to be looking for top tier defensive talent at the 10th overall pick. So I would look for whoever they can talk themselves into as the best defensive player. And in fact, that brings me to my next point of view, which is Micah Parsons under 13.5 worth a look? Are there going to be teams that talk themselves into what the Bucs did in going and getting Devin White and pairing him with Levante David and having like this crushing core at the middle of your defense? Like, are other teams going to look at that and be like, we need to get one of those guys? And Micah Parsons is the next guy in that mold, and he's going to be the anchor of our defense for a generation. Like, he seems like one of the defensive players that could get a little bit of buzz and move up into the top 10 discussion. 13.5 seems like a bad number to me,
especially after today. And this is going to be the F part of this whole thing, because we have these every year where, he did a workout on campus and they hand timed him at like 4.1, and the laser only had him at like 4.15 though, the fastest man on earth. And then you get to the combine and you get a couple tries at it and you get a pretty accurate score, or at least everybody is running on the exact same field with the exact same timers on the exact same conditions. There's no, you can compare players relative if you really value speed. Well, today it came out that not only Parsons, but the defensive end from up there at Penn State, like they both had stupid fast times. like the linebacker was like a 4.4 and the D end was like a 4.35 or something. Like, you should go look at these. Like, I don't know if they're fast. They're very fast. Like, they're good players. But this is what's going to happen when the combine gets canceled. There's gonna be some wide receiver that runs a 3.99. I don't know, man. It's gonna get out of hand on some of these hand timed at your own campus kind of shit. But either way, stuff like that is gonna pump people up. And yeah, he's fast. I wouldn't mind having him on my team.
The pro day for Penn State, drawing eyeballs. There's not really a good pass rusher in this draft, and this is the second draft in a row now, where last year you had one guy, and this year you have none. Like, there are some teams are going to reach for the best, whoever has becomes sort of the consensus best pass rusher, correct? You agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, there will be some reaching because there wasn't a big crop of it last year, and some of the trades that people made didn't pan out as well. Like, the Vikings traded for what's his face from the Jags, and he ended up on Baltimore. Ngakwe, yeah. So I mean, the Seahawks made a nice trade. I thought he ended up working out all right in Dunlap. I think he's gone now too.
They cut him today.
Yeah, they had to cut him because it's just basically the salary situation there. So, we'll look at the free agency output for that, because I think Clowney's probably a free agent again, because he is every year. Bud Dupree, I know, is a free agent, obviously coming off injury. Shaq Barrett's a free agent for sure. Obviously, J.J. Watt, I don't think too highly of anymore at this point in his career, but he he's already picked a spot, so it doesn't matter. I'm trying to think if there's any other edge guys. Carl Lawson, I think, is a free agent. I'm not sure what Cincinnati's situation is with that. So there's some guys out there. Matt Juden.
He's nice.
Maybe Ngakoue again. I think Ngakoue is just a free agent anyway. And maybe he ends up, if I were him, I wouldn't mind just staying in Baltimore. That wouldn't be the worst place to be. So there's some guys out there. So maybe you don't have to reach quite as bad, but there still will be somebody that reaches, because this is the second straight year there hasn't been a ton of great edge players.
Yeah. The list is lean. Melvin Ingram, you didn't mention. He's the only other guy that I would put in the mix, but he's been hurt so much. I have no idea if he realistically can contribute anything at all. Juden, I have eyes for Juden if I'm out there in the free agency market personally. He's my favorite of all those guys you mentioned. Let's see. How about the fact that there was so many offensive linemen taken in round 1 last year? Now, all those guys panned out. Right? Like now,
even the ones that looked like busts right away.
Yeah, they all panned out.
Thomas looked bad to start, and he ended up playing very well. Obviously, Wirfs played very well. I mean, yeah, they all kind of stuck.
How does that affect the decision making for GMs and franchises this year? Do they go back to that well and look for more of that same model if those guys are available, or is it like, well, we got all our needs filled last year, we can do, we'll be fine on the free? Because honestly, the big ticket free agency spending is going to be hard to come by this year because of the cap limitations on so many teams. But there'll be lots of middling and low contracts spent, and there's going to be a lot of.
The other thing too. It depends on your cap situation, because there are a few linemen out there. There's always a few linemen out there, and I think like Trent Williams, that was a rent deal, wasn't it? He's a free agent, and I don't know if I can name any other offensive linemen. But Trent Williams and a couple other guys will be out there. There's always some offensive linemen to be picked up off the, I don't want to say scrap heap, because certainly it's not the scrap heap with him. But there'll be someone to find. And I don't know, it comes down to talent evaluation, I suppose, for some of these teams. You don't want to just say, like, oh, a lot of teams took offensive linemen and it worked out last year. Yeah, but those guys were all studs. Like, those guys were all first-round talent. In fact, there was a couple guys where we weren't sure who the 6th guy was going to be or the 7th guy was going to be. Really, there's a bunch of guys that are right in that 25 to 40 range that could end up in the end of the first round. Like Ruiz, the center from Michigan, ended up going. That was kind of a surprise to me. I didn't think he was going to be our guy. I feel like he was the guy that put us over the prop when he went to New Orleans. And
I think there
was a bunch of guys that were right there. So I don't know if the crop is, obviously the crop isn't as healthy this year, so I'm not sure what we'll see.
Dude, Sam, with the Portugal Euros 2020, do you know they're in like the group of death, man? I don't even know if they're getting out of Group F. They got to play France and Germany, and I don't remember the 4th team, but that's a risky play, my man. They're gonna have to do it themselves.
Sam's a rent boy down in Soho right now, so he doesn't know what he's doing. He's probably been up all night drinking warm. What do they do in England? Drink warm beer.
Sure.
Still jobless. We hope you find a job, Sam. This pandemic has been tough on all of us.
Yeah.
Friend of the pod, Sam Bauer. If you're out there and you're in London or Merseyside area, hire this little ginger.
All right. So macro stuff. Then we think potentially tackles. They're not as good a crop, but there's clearly 3 guys that I think are bona fide top half of round 1. And then not a lot after that, talent wise. It looks like
it kind of peters off after that.
So I'm going to have my eyes out for a tackles under position, because again, I think there's going to be the late round flurry this year has whiffs of teams trying to trade back in to get quarterbacks that fell, and teams taking wide receivers because it's just an absolute embarrassment of riches of how good the wide receivers are, and they're going to slide, in my opinion. So I think we're looking for kind of wide receivers overs and then unders on linemen. Probably overs on cornerbacks, unders on defensive linemen. I don't know.
And it's funny too, because like you look at all those numbers, and we know there are going to be a certain amount of players taken in the first round. Like that fact is immutable. So you can't just play, you can't play all the overs or all the unders or whatnot. You have to, every time you think there's an under going to cash, like, we're not going to see a ton of linemen going to get taken. You have to sit and think about, like, does that force me? It doesn't force. Does it push me towards another bet? Like, where are these teams who maybe need a lineman? What are their other needs if they're not going to take someone in the first round? Like, are we? And I think the answer is probably wide receivers. I think it's the opposite of last year. Did wide receivers go over too? I feel like they almost had to.
Yeah, they did. They did.
It was a big number, but I think
it was like 5.5, and I think Ayuk was
we had
6th.
We had a flurry at the end, 6 or 7. So,
Jefferson was the 5th. Unbelievable. That's
nuts.
It is.
Yeah, I believe. Okay. Yeah, Ayuk was.
Ayuk was the 6th. Okay, so I guess I guess of the props available now, the only ones that I see with real deal value here, Zach Wilson under 2.5 right now looks good at -260 still. I think that should be in the 300 range. Actually, you can get that at 188 on Bookmaker. They'll take $1,000 bet on that, so that's not trivial.
I'm in a banner.
Wilson under 2.5 -188 looks good. It's an
official play.
Penny Sewell under 5.5 -300 ish is a good look. And then
what's your Mac Jones price right now?
I'm looking at 14.5.
Boy, that fell on
-115 on either side.
Yeah, we missed that. That opened way too high.
Like 30 or 20 something.
I mean, even when it was like 19.5, I feel like that was silly.
Okay, so what
15 is probably his floor.
So what do you think is going on with some of the teams that we haven't mentioned from the quarterback position this year? We'll start with San Francisco. How do you handicap that market? They're out on Jimmy G?
I would be.
Are they going to go really with a rookie though? Because they're like win now with some of the talent on that team.
I know it. I know. I would have thought they'd been more in on the Stafford thing, or even like the Wentz thing, or try somebody in the league.
Or Matt Ryan. If the Falcons quit on Matt Ryan, bring him in for 2 years.
Yeah, obviously I really doubt Seattle would entertain offers from somebody in the division, and they just don't have the capital to trade for Watson. But maybe somebody like Minnesota. Kirk Cousins fits good in that system, and Minnesota might be able to finally get that albatross from around their neck. Minnesota might be ready to move on. They might be a team that takes a quarterback in the second day, or even
interesting
if somebody they like, because I think they've seen what Kirk Cousins can give them, and it's not. You're not going to get any further. Like, you've plateaued. That's where he is.
So send Cousins out west and take Trey Lance at top. What are they picking? Picking 12th,
11th, 12th, somewhere in there.
14.
They won their last game like a bunch of assholes.
So what about the Patriots?
I will not be answering that. I never know. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think they know what they're going to do.
So many people want to send Mac Jones to the Pats because he has the same body archetype as Tom Brady did before he went to New England, which is a weird reason people are slotting that. Yeah. His photo reminds me of Tom Brady's photo when he was in the draft. So they're going to take him in round 1. Is that how that works?
You can't really I feel like the Patriots are that team. They're the kid that shows up late, didn't study, and isn't, it's not like the kid who doesn't study and gets an A. They don't study. They show up late for the test and get like a C-. It's never like an embarrassingly bad draft, but it's never like, oh, you drafted a bunch of good players. Like they find some guys here and there, but I just don't think they give a shit about the draft for the most part. Yeah, we'll let other people make decisions for us. We'll take the best player available and move on.
Okay.
We're on to Cincinnati.
We mentioned Surtain under 10.5. You like that at -140?
Yeah, their draft room had a dog in the chair.
That was
Thank
great.
you, Maple.
What do you think of Caleb Farley under 9.5 plus 102? He's the cornerback out of Virginia Tech who's gotten buzzes the CB1. Okay.
What was it? What was the price on the under?
Just under 9.5 is plus 102 for Caleb Farley. 10.5 for Surtain was minus 140. You could see Surtain go 6-7, and then a quarterback something else to Denver, and then Dallas takes Farley 10. So that could be that would be a tough beat. I'm probably going to stay out of that. Yeah. Micah Parsons under 13.5 minus 125. I think that's a slam. I think that comes into about 10.5 by the time we get to draft day. Waddle and Smith are sliding. Chase is sliding.
And they're the same guy. Like, in a lot of people's eyes, I think just as many teams have Waddle over Smith as have Smith over Waddle. So there's no telling who's going to go. I think I'd rather have Waddle. Smith is so little. He's so good, but man, once he takes some NFL hits, he's just too little. A little guy.
Justin Jefferson is about that same size, isn't he? He did pretty well last year.
His legs aren't that little.
Oh, you think that's just an aesthetics thing, man. He's got strong legs. I could.
No, I mean he's great. He's electric. What we saw from him in the college football playoff was crazy.
Yeah, it was. Okay, and none of these other names really strike me except for Najee Harris over 24.5.
Yeah.
Who hasn't gotten it through their heads that you don't draft a running back in round 1 yet?
I mean, Seattle, and that's just not a good fit for him.
Do you think Seattle does something stupid like give Aaron Jones $1 billion?
Yeah, I mean, but just Seattle's spot is like 26 though, right? So it's still
I feel like Seattle does something stupid like goes out and wades into the free agency market and gives Aaron Jones a bunch of money. Don't you think?
Oh my God, Seattle. They don't have a pick. They give it to the Jets. Adams.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I'll take. Well, now, yeah, for sure. Yeah, give me that one now. I'll take it now. Now that Seattle's out of the way, I have it.
Harris. Yeah, Najee Harris. I can already tell you goes round 2, pick number 3 to the Atlanta Falcons, 35th overall. He gets comped to Art Smith has got his next Derrick Henry. Like, that's coming. People will not be able to hold their breath making that comp. All right. Anything specific? Anything specific we missed in the NFL kind of poo-poo platter here? Off-season prep?
No, I mean, obviously you guys in the live chat have had some nice questions, comments, and that. But if you are rewatching this, not live, or listening to this in podcast form, and you have a hot take, or maybe you have a local that has props up that we haven't discussed or something fun, drop it in the comments, drop it in the comments on YouTube, on Twitter, wherever. So, hit us with those if you have anything, and we'll certainly try to answer those, as both of us will be digging into draft props pretty heartily here over the next few weeks.
Right now, I've basically gotten top 10.
It sucks because this is like a busy time for me with the conference tournaments, but at the same time, like, this is where you have to make some of these bets. You can't wait a month. They'll be gone. So hit us with any questions, and we'll be back. We'll come back. We'll probably do another Q&A show here soon. That was so fun. I just thought that was fun.
I agree.
And we had some non-crypto questions that we have to give people a chance to answer, re-ask.
I'll just answer crypto questions too if you want.
They can be crypto or not.
Yeah, it's the slice, the pie chart of my brain in terms of what I'm spending time thinking about right now is an embarrassing percentage of crypto. It's embarrassing. I need to think hard about what I'm doing in my life and how much time I'm dedicating to reading, listening, and just thinking about this stuff. So happy to talk about it though.
53-4.
It's been a good day, man.
Like Ice Cube said.
Up only?
No.
Today was a good day.
Today was a good day. From LA.
I know what you were. I know
you knew, but I'm still mad. All right. Yeah. Catch you guys later. Thanks for hanging.
All right. I'm going to hit the music. I think we realistically could wake up to 56 at this point. There's just no levels here where anything has been traded.
Patrick didn't have to use his AK. That's from the song. I don't know the exact words, but something